As the 20th century drew to its close and our new century began, the battle over the world economy intensified. Some people feared globalization and questioned the benefits. Others welcomed it.
Millions of people today are better off than they would have been without those trends and developments, without globalization. And very few people have been harmed by it.
When the terrible events of September 11th seemed likely to drive the world deeper into a recession, new questions emerged about the perils of the new world economy. How can our now deeply interconnected world cope with a global downturn and rise above other crises? And is global terrorism the dark side of the promise of globalization?
You can't get away from the fact that globalization makes us interdependent. So it's not an option to shed it. So is it going to be on balance positive or negative?
This is the story of how the new global economy was born. A century-long battle as to which would control the commanding heights of the world's economies, governments or markets. The story of intellectual combat over which economic system would truly benefit mankind. The story of epic political struggles to implant those ideas on the nations of the world.
Part of what's happened is a capitalist revolution. At the end of the 20th century, the market economy, the capitalist system, became the only model for the vast majority of the world.
This economic revolution has defined the wealth and fate of nations and will determine the future of the planet.
This new world economy is being driven by technological change and by political change, but none of it would have happened without a revolution in ideas.
Tonight, the battle of ideas that still divides our world.
This program was made possible by
EDS, offering business and technology solutions from strategy and implementation to hosting. EDS, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
FedEx. Globality may be new to some, but to us, it's the way we do business.
We're reinventing the energy business as we develop American oil and gas, next-generation clean fuels, and renewables like solar power. We're the people of BP.
Additional funding was provided by the Pew Charitable Trusts, the John Templeton Foundation, the Smith Richardson Foundation, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
World War II. Sirens sound the alert. German bombers will pound another British city tonight. During the Blitz, the two most important economists of the age shared air warden duty on the roof of King's College. An English gentleman and an Austrian exile, personal friends, but intellectual rivals. How their battle of ideas still shapes our life and society is our story. John Maynard Keynes helped the Allied governments defend freedom by planning their wartime economies. Friedrich von Hayek thought government interference in the economy was a threat to freedom.
The debate over market forces, whether you have an economy that's based upon prices or state planning, has been at the very heart of the economic battles of the last 100 years. For decades, the ideas of John Maynard Keynes dominated the economies of the Western world.
Keynes felt that the market economy would go to excesses, and when things were in difficulty, the market wouldn't work. Therefore, the government had to step in. Hayek felt that the market would eventually take care of itself.
It was only when Hayek was a very old man that his ideas began to prevail and the world began to change.
At the start of the 20th century, Hayek and Keynes had witnessed the first age of globalization. Every day, life was being transformed everywhere. Technologies like the telegraph and the telephone revolutionized communications. Steamships and railways made the world a smaller place. Tens of millions migrated without the need for passports. Keynes described this global market in which trade flowed freely.
The inhabitant of London could order by telephone, sipping his morning tea, the various products of the whole earth, and reasonably expect their early delivery upon his doorstep. Militarism and imperialism, of racial and cultural rivalries, were little more than the amusements of his daily newspaper. What an extraordinary episode in the economic progress of man was that age which came to an end in August 1914.
Hayek summed it up more succinctly.
We did not realize how fragile our civilization was.
The murder of an Austrian archduke by a terrorist triggered a world war. It would be almost 80 years before there was once again a truly global economy. World War I destroyed 20 million lives. It laid a whole continent to waste. There was blood and carnage amidst the beauty of the Italian Alps, where the armies of Austria and Italy were fighting. Friedrich von Hayek served in the Austrian artillery. He was only 17 years old, still a schoolboy. The fighting was ferocious. He experienced retreat and defeat.
The decisive influence was really World War I. It's bound to draw your attention to the problems of political organization.
He vowed to work for a better world.
The First World War was a cataclysm. People were disillusioned, people were bitter, they were looking for something better. Socialism, communism seemed to promise that better world.
By overthrowing the old order, the Russian Revolution aimed to deliver that better world. Inspired by the economic theories of Karl Marx, the Bolsheviks sought to smash capitalism. Lenin, the revolution's leader, urged the workers of the world to unite against the global economy. The revolution made trade, commerce, and private property criminal acts. Lenin promised to end the economic exploitation of man by man. The man who was destined to be Hayek's great intellectual rival was a brilliant young academic at Cambridge University. But John Maynard Keynes was much more than that. He befriended writers and artists. One painted these murals for him. He was also a familiar figure in the city of London, where he made a fortune in the stock market, lost it all, and made it back again. Familiar with politicians and prime ministers, Keynes spent the First World War advising the British government on how to organize its wartime economy. At the end of the war, Keynes joined the British peace delegation at Versailles in France. The victorious Allies wanted defeated Germany to pay the costs of the war through what were called reparations.
All the statesmen at Versailles could think about was how to squeeze money out of an already bankrupt Germany.
Keynes felt that the reparations were out of all proportion to what an economy could really take and would have very destructive social and political and economic consequences.
Angry and disgusted, Keynes resigned. Back in England, he went to stay with his friend, the painter Duncan Grant. That summer, Grant painted Keynes, writing his prophetic book, The Economic Consequences of the Peace.
If we take the view that Germany must be kept impoverished and her children starved and crippled, vengeance, I dare predict, will not limp. Nothing can delay that final war that will destroy the civilization and progress of our generation.
Austria had lost the war and its empire. Vienna was a cold and hungry city. Revolution was in the air. Socialists and communists were winning the battle for hearts and minds. Young and idealistic, Friedrich von Hayek enrolled at the University of Vienna.
It was during the war that I more or less decided to do economics. I really got hooked.
Socialism seemed to promise a more just society. Albert Slabinger, a former pupil and disciple of Hayek.
He openly said that he at one time was a socialist of the mild sort, where concerns for the poor and concerns for fairness and equity would help to determine government policy.
Much of Vienna's intellectual life took place outside the university, in the coffee houses across the Ringstrasse. There were informal seminars for those who loved discussion and argument. Hayek joined the circle of a passionate libertarian called Ludwig von Mises. Von Mises believed markets, like people, needed to be free from government meddling.
Ludwig von Mises was the preeminent economist of the Austrian school. The distinguishing hallmark of the Austrian school of economic thought is that markets work and governments don't.
Von Mises predicted that the new Soviet socialist economy would never work, precisely because the government controlled wages and prices.
What von Mises said is that the great flaw of socialism is that it doesn't have a functioning price system to send all the signals to consumers and producers as to what something is worth. That these prices are at the very heart of what makes a functioning economy work. You can think of them as traffic signals. And if you don't have them, what you get is a system that doesn't work, or you get chaos.